Welcome to part 8 of the DIY Squaredrop camper build series. So far, if you've been following along, you've seen that there's been quite a few mistakes made, and this video is no different. So first, I'm working on one of the walls, and I need to router out a spot for the galley hatch to close, because I did not do this before I glued them up together. So that's what we're working on here. Sorry about the delay since the last video. A lot of real life stuff getting in the way, and I've also just got a backlog of videos to edit. And we're going to be going on our honeymoon here soon, so I'm trying to get all these videos edited so that there's content while I'm away. There will be another video coming out likely at the end of this week, possibly sooner, that has a bunch of other random things I did that doesn't include the walls, but I just wanted to kind of get the creation of the walls videos out of the way. So as you can see, I routed out the back area, which is where the galley hatch will sit on, as well as this front area with the curve near the top, which is where the actual weight of the galley hatch will sit on, and then it will clamp in the back so that it's closed and sealed, and so no dust or debris or anything gets inside while the hatch is actually closed. And I decided to just freehand that little bit right there, and it came out really nice. I was surprised. So here my buddy Darnell came over to help me to start the insulation for the second wall. And once again, it was pretty easy going, just cutting out all the voids. I'm thinking I probably should have added a little more insulation, but there will definitely be a lot of insulation in the doors so that they're not super heavy. So that'll definitely help when we get everything all put together. And there'll be a whole separate video on making the doors. It's definitely something I'm looking forward to, but also scared about. So now begins the first glue up of the second wall. And unfortunately, this is kind of where the beginning of my mistakes came. While we were gluing this up, I didn't realize it at the time, but once we were done, I realized that I created two right walls instead of a left wall and a right wall. And Tony specifically said in his book to remember that you're making mirror images, and yet I did not realize it until after this first glue up. Because this glue up is supposed to be the outside wall. So here you can see that I am now fixing that, because thankfully I'd only glue that first part on to the side. Oh, there goes my camera. Unfortunately it fell again, but this time it did not break. Well, it still works. So once I've figured out that the walls were the same, I cut down the outer wall to match so that it can technically be the inner wall. And then I used another piece of plywood and I put down my finished other wall, and I routed this piece of plywood to the same size as the outside wall of the other one, so it can go on the other side, therefore having a right and a left wall. It was great that I did not glue up the second wall before realizing this fatal mistake. This is my buddy Brian. He came over again to help me out with this. And, you know, it's definitely been a little rough with these mistakes, but thankfully this one I caught ahead of time, and it only was about an extra maybe 45 minutes of work to get this one figured out. Unfortunately, I did not make little spacer blocks to help me mount the other side of this wall ahead of time, so it actually took us quite a while to, once we poured the glue, to get it straight and perfect. Well, it's never going to be perfect because I didn't have reference blocks, but we did spend a good 20 minutes trying to get it perfect, and after weighing everything down and clamping it, which you'll see shortly, it actually did hold. And with the bulkhead and the front shelf, I believe that if it bows a little bit, it's not going to be the end of the world. I'm also going to reinforce it at the door to where it stays closed, so that there's no peeling off of the outside wall from the inner core. But I'm confident that it's going to be just fine, especially because it's going to be screwed in at a lot of places as well. So we're weighing everything down, try to get that glue settled. As I said, it took about 30 minutes to get it on there, and the dry time is only like 5, but it was still a little tacky, which is good. Here I'm routing out the door core from the outside of the wall, the new fresh outside of the wall. And here I'm kind of lining everything up and making sure that everything looks good. And then I also realize, I need to clean up these edges on the inside of the wall. So I'll use my flush cut router bit to make sure that both of the doors were flush with each other. Not with each other, but with, the 3 pieces of plywood that sandwiched these together. Overall, I am having a blast with this project. It's taking a lot longer than I originally anticipated, and that's honestly mostly because there are some things that I can't do by myself. So this is the floor, the underside of the floor, and which I built in another video. And I noticed that there were a couple little holes, you can see it there. From when I was screwing things together, I didn't notice that I went through all the way, and then when I checked the floor underneath, I noticed that there were, I want to say like 6 little holes from drilling. So I sanded off the spar urethane that I had put on, and I used wood filler on each one of the holes. And then after the wood filler, I sanded it down, made it nice and flush, and then did 3 coats of spar urethane on it over the course of a day to make sure that it's all sealed and good to go again. As I said in the next video, there'll be little odds and ends that I did, because I noticed that the trailer was just too high up, and the countertop in the back would just be really high, and it would be uncomfortable to like cook and chop things and use the stove. So, as you can actually see in the background, there's smaller tires now, and the reason there are smaller tires is for that reason exactly, needing it to be shorter. But unfortunately, the brakes that I got originally for the trailer are for bigger tires. And so, with the bolt pattern, I should say, the bolt pattern is for bigger tires. So I ordered another set of brakes and another set of tires, and I lowered the trailer by almost 6 inches. And now the countertop should be in a really good place and really convenient, and even like kids should be able to reach for stuff on there or open the cooler when they slide it out once everything's done. So the next video will have that, as well as some other random little fixes I needed to do. And also I put a 2x2 1/4-inch steel beam between the suspension, and just for extra support on the suspension. So here I am measuring and marking where the bulkhead will be, and I'm going to put a dado in there so that the bulkhead can sit in there. Now, for Tony's book, he says the dado should go all the way to the outside wall, but because I'm not necessarily worried, but because I want to make sure that my walls are really, thick and really stay together with the pressing in on the bulkhead, I didn't go quite all the way through to the outer wall. And you'll notice that there's a little bit, this is the bottom of the wall, there's a little bit where there's not anything routed out. And that is so it's like a slot, and the bulkhead will be cut in a way at the bottom to where it fits in there and then rests on the floor directly. So the dado, it's not being held up by the dado, but it's solidly on the floor, just to get a really good connection. So I'm slowly increasing how much I'm routering out and trying to fit it. That one looks good, it's fit. So I grab the other wall and I do the same thing. I measure from the front because I want them both to be in the perfect spot, in the exact spot, so that the bulkhead is 90 degrees and square to everything on every side, or at least as close as I can get with my inexperienced hands. I guess now is as good a time as any to say, if you're liking this content, please like and subscribe. I will have another video, like I said, coming out towards the end of the week, maybe sooner, with all the odds and ends that I did. And then, in theory, after next week, the video of me putting the walls up will go up. I am doing that in the next couple days and putting the walls up, so there should be a video on that very soon. So my buddy Garrett helped me out here. We are lining up the floor to be exactly where it needs to be, and we're drilling through the tabs that I have that we had welded onto the frame to bolt down the floor to the frame. And then I'm using a Forstner bit on the top so that it's countersunk. The bolt is countersunk into the floor. And then I'll use hardened epoxy to kind of make that level, but it's only really necessary in the back because the bed will be covering these big holes anyway. So yeah, here we're putting in the elevator bolts. And it's all good. And here you can see Garrett is putting pocket holes on the bottom of the doors, or excuse me, of the walls. So the walls will have PL Premium as they sit on top of the floor and on the outside of the floor, and it will be reinforced with these pocket holes, just for extra added strength and protection from coming out. So more and more pocket holes. It's about every 8 inches is what Tony suggested in the book, so that's exactly what I did. I did it every 8 inches. Or I had Garrett help me do it every 8 inches, and avoiding getting close to the bulkhead so that we can actually screw it in once the bulkhead is in. You also notice in this shot that line, that dado I made in the back, and that was going to be for the countertop, and I decided not to even use that. I'm going to cover that up with aluminum angle. I don't need it going into there. So this 5x5 3/4 inch is the actual bulkhead. So I'm drawing out exactly what it should look like before we cut, and I'm double, triple, quadruple checking all my measurements to make sure that it will fit perfectly inside the dado. And you'll notice, like I mentioned, how the dado slots don't go all the way to the floor. You'll see that in our cuts here, which will be here shortly. And you can see those now. I used the pull saw to help me finish off the cuts. Garrett decided he wanted to give it a try as well. So you can see that little notch. That will sit on the floor, the bottom, and the notch will go into the dado that was cut into the wall. So this is the finished bulkhead, and I'm now cutting it down to an upper and a lower bulkhead. And what this is the lower bulkhead will go in. It'll go in the dado slot. It'll have the little slots at the bottom. And then the kitchen countertop, the galley countertop in the back, will actually sit on top of it and go through into the main cabin. And that's just for added stability throughout, and also so that we have a shelf on the inside underneath the cabinets, just above our feet. And then the upper bulkhead, which is the leftover, will be slid in on top. And here I'm making my dead man braces, is what Tony calls them in his book. And this is what will help me mount the walls. I create this out of a square or a 90-degree angle, and I put extra wood on it so that I can screw it into the floor and have it clamped to the walls to keep them straight while the glue, the PL Premium, is drying. So I'm creating 2, one for each side. And those are done. And now, the last thing I'm doing in this video is I'm drilling the holes inside the dado slots so that I can also screw it in once it's all glued up. So thanks for watching, and like I said, there'll be another video later this week.